10 seconds to go.
Okay, and then I'll start letting everybody into the room.
Okay.
You should be good, Sean.
All right, everyone. I want to just welcome everyone. My name is Sean Aiken. As you know, I'm the school superintendent here with Shaler area. We wanted to take some time today just to talk through the transition process of moving from remote instruction to hybrid instruction over the course of the next week. At the very end of this presentation, I'll just go through some details with you. Dr. Black, if you could hit the next slide. Oh, sorry, I guess I could. So just at the end, we'll have an opportunity. We have about a 15 to 20 minute presentation to start today. And then immediately following our short presentation, we'll have an opportunity for those on the call to ask any questions that they may have. And we will provide guidelines for sharing those comments or questions that you may have. We just ask that you also keep your microphones muted during the presentation today. We appreciate that. So as I mentioned, my name is Sean Aiken, and I just want to welcome and thank you today. We appreciate the opportunity to connect with our families and community members and give you the opportunity to engage with us and ask us any questions that you may have. We use this model of communication last summer, and it seemed to work out well. And we want to continue to be communicative and responsive to the needs of our community. As we announced earlier this week, we are going to transition to hybrid instruction. The cohort A group will start on Tuesday, January 19th. Next Tuesday, and then cohort B will start back on Thursday, January 21st. Some of you may wonder why Monday, January 18th wasn't selected as the date to start, and that's an in-service day for our teachers and no school for students that day. So as we transition to the hybrid instruction next week, we want to continue to ensure the health and safety of all of our students and staff. That is of the utmost importance, and we need to adhere to all the social distancing and the health guidelines that are outlined in the Pennsylvania Department of Health. And we also recognize that there are some changes to these guidelines and requirements, and we're going to outline this. It was outlined in your communication, and they're going to be outlined in the presentation today. So a very common question that we've received over the last 6 days or so, actually a week now, is why did we extend an additional week? I know that we were hoping to start back in hybrid on Monday, yesterday, but we made the transition and we apologize for the short notice. Obviously, we struggled with that decision, and it was a very difficult decision that we needed to make in collaboration with our administration and the school board. But it was based on a couple of different factors. The first factor is the Pennsylvania Allegheny County Health Department have continued to share their concerns with school leaders regarding the surges in cases around the recent holidays. We saw that back in October with Halloween and into November. And we saw it at Thanksgiving into December, and we anticipated and have seen the steady increase in numbers, and that was a concern to us. I think the other factor that played a role in this decision is around the 1 week of additional extension would provide us with additional time for us to get further away from the Christmas holiday, the New Year's holiday, and give us the opportunity to come back in healthy and not have to worry about the potential of closing school down or anything that we may have needed to do in case of a quarantine, isolation, or number of cases, positive cases that may have occurred. We continue to rely on the state and local and state health officials' guidelines, along with the relevant case data to our school district. And we understand right now that we're in a substantial category right now, according to the Pennsylvania Department of Health numbers, based on the numbers within Allegheny County. And that is why we are currently in the remote instruction model. But as we transition, we'll talk about this and why we're going to transition and how we're going to transition over the course of the next week. So a common question that we get and we've received over the past week is just about changing cohorts. We've had students in cohort A and cohort B that have opted to enroll in cohort C, and that's perfectly fine. We understand that families are going to make these decisions based on the health and safety needs of their children, and we respect that. We also recognize that students in cohort C have the option and may consider moving to cohort A or cohort B, and we are open to that move as well. We ask that you contact your child's school main office by this Friday, January 15th, if there's going to be a change. Bus assignments for next week have not changed since the November period of time when we were in hybrid instruction. And so if you were riding a school bus at that time, you'll still continue to ride that specific bus and follow the same protocol that you did at that time. And if you have any questions about that, please feel free to contact your child's school if you need any information. That information is also in Infinite Campus. If you need information on that, you can find it there. So back in December, late November, early December, the state contacted each school district across the state of Pennsylvania, and they issued a new order requiring schools in the counties with substantial community transmission to attest to the health and safety protocols being followed by that school district. At that point in time, we were in remote instruction. So we indicated that we were in remote instruction at that time, and we submitted this attestation to the state. As a district, we have also re-signed that attestation in anticipation that we are going to be moving into hybrid instruction. This involves the implementation of the mitigation efforts form, just declaring that while students are receiving in-person instruction in our district, we will comply with the Pennsylvania Department of Health's universal face covering order. This was updated, as I said, in late November, and follows the recommendations for pre-K to 12 schools following identification of a case of COVID-19. This information can also be found in the communication that we shared yesterday, and there's some links in that communication that can take you to information on some of the state sites that can provide further information for you.
Thank you, Dr. Aiken. Just to review briefly, and this was also shared in the parent communication, as Dr. Aiken previously stated, because our community still is in substantial, there are guidelines for cases that we must address within our schools. The State Department of Health, along with the Department of Education, still continue to suggest full remote learning model is a consideration for counties, but understanding the need to have students return to schools, our district, along with many others, is pursuing in-person instruction. What the district must follow is the recommendations for closing individual school buildings that experience a specific number of cases within a 14-day rolling period of time. And the number of positive COVID-19 cases within each of our buildings will trigger a school closure based on the size of each of the schools. This table was shared within the communication. You can see the Department of Health and Education have outlined large buildings, medium buildings, and small school buildings based on student enrollment. In Shaler area, our high school is considered a large building. Our medium buildings are the middle school and elementary school, and our small buildings are the 4 primary schools. And as you can see, there are 4 recommendations based on the number of students or staff that are positive for COVID-19 on a 14-day rolling closure. And those recommendations range from cleaning the areas where the case had spent time, which is already part of our standard protocol when we have a COVID-19 case confirmed. The second recommendation is for closures of schools for a period of 3 to 7 days to clean and conduct contact tracing, again, based on a range of student and staff positive cases. And then finally, a recommendation to close school for 14 days to clean and conduct contact tracing. So that would be the most significant number of cases that would require that. It's important to note that we will continue to follow this matrix that we are implementing as we reopen schools. And we will be tracking those cases on that 14-day rolling basis. Once a school has been closed for a period of time, it is important to note that that 14-day period restarts again. So once that building is closed, that 14-day period will begin. And again, this is not district-wide. This is building by building. So a little bit different than what we have seen previously with our school closures. If necessitated, we have closed the district as a whole. Beginning when we return next week, we will be looking at these on a building by building basis. One of the additions that we are adding when we reopen school is a COVID dashboard. In order for us to help increase transparency and help our entire community anticipate the need for a possible school closure due to COVID-19 cases, we do have a web page that we've created, which will include a dashboard, and it's going to provide you with a visual, which we'll show you in just a minute, to track those COVID cases in each school building over that 14-day period. And if a school experiences positive COVID-19 cases, we are going to continue to send emails to all families and staff members of the affected building so that they are aware that we do have a newly confirmed case within that school. And as previously stated, the number of positive cases, not the number of quarantined students or staff, but confirmed positive cases could trigger possible school closures based on the matrix from the health department and education department. This is a visual of what the COVID dashboard will look like. If you've seen dashboards, again, very similar, we're going to be looking at the total number of confirmed cases. So active cases within a 14-day period. We'll also be tracking the number of resolved cases. Additionally, we will see a 30-day trend of confirmed cases in the building, a breakdown by school. So you'll see the cases at a district level, but you will also see the cases that you can filter by an individual school. And then again, we will have a 14-day period case count that will help us determine the operational mode that we are in. And in each of the communications that we share about positive cases, we will be including information relative to the dashboard so that you're able to view that data. Just to reiterate, part of reopening in the attestation agreement that Dr. Aiken spoke about does make us continue to follow our face covering strategies that we have in the district. We're not changing our face covering recommendations and procedures. They'll continue to be in line with what we had during our previous hybrid operational mode. Face coverings can only be removed when students are eating or drinking, spaced at least 6 feet apart. When wearing a face covering creates an unsafe condition in which to operate equipment or execute a task, or they are at least 6 feet apart during face covering breaks to last no longer than 10 minutes. These strategies were all in place when we were in hybrid before. We'll continue to follow those moving forward. It's important to note, while we are just reiterating the face covering regulation, because it is part of the attestation agreement, we will continue all of our mitigation strategies that were used in October and November with hybrid instruction. We just wanted to share with parents again, and this was included in the email from the district that you received yesterday. It is so important, and we can't reiterate enough, the daily symptom screening. We are continuing to ask parents to check students at home as part of their screening before sending their students to school, either on a school bus or on other transportation. If your child is feeling ill, if they have one or more of the symptoms in group A or two or more of the symptoms in group B, or are taking fever reducing medication, please stay at home. This is so important. We have a mode in place with Cohort C that as students aren't feeling good and they're able to participate in virtual learning, they can do that from home. We are asking families to please keep ill children at home and not send them to school. We want you to touch base with the school nurse. We'll share with you a little bit later times that we would ask that you contact them. But if your child says to you, I'm not feeling well, again, we would just ask that you please keep them at home until you have either been able to reach out to one of our school nurses or another medical professional to determine whether or not these are potential COVID symptoms that need to be addressed.
Thank you, Dr. O'Black. So we just have 2 quick slides left. And this information has changed a little bit, so I just wanted to point out, and this was in the communication that was shared with you yesterday as well. But I want to note that all travelers over the age of 11 entering Pennsylvania from locations outside the Commonwealth, including Pennsylvania, are returning home from outside can need to produce evidence of a negative COVID-19 test or place themselves in quarantine for 10 days without a test, or a 7-day quarantine with a negative test on or after day 5 of the quarantine. So this information has changed recently. And obviously, we understand that people have to travel for different reasons. And so we recognize that. We just ask that you adhere to this guideline. And we recognize that this is going to be very challenging for us to police across a district with 4,000 students. But we ask that you contact your school principal or your school nurse or counselor if you have any questions regarding this, and we can certainly answer any questions too. The second piece of this just recognizes that there are people that live close to state lines that travel in and out of the state every day for various reasons. There could be medical reasons, there could be a court order or something like that. So we recognize that there are issues that may require a family to travel the same day outside the state line and then come back that same day. This does not apply for students and families that need to do that, specifically for the reasons listed below. And then the final piece, and I think our families did a tremendous job of this back in the month of October and November, is just that communication with the school nurse. We want you to continue to communicate. We understand that during remote instruction, many families did not report, positive cases or some of the traveling concerns and different things like that, and maybe questions that you may have had at that time. But now as we transition back into hybrid, it's important to communicate with your school nurse. So just a list of different reasons traveling for outside the state of Pennsylvania. A student, your child, or a member of your household testing positive for COVID-19, close contact with a confirmed or presumed positive COVID-19 case, or if your child is currently quarantined or isolated due to travel or any of the circumstances that we've talked about today. So please continue. The information for the school nurses is on our school website, and we encourage frequent and consistent communication with the school nurses. They really have been tremendous asset for us in this school district over the past 10 months. So, Dr. O'Black, do you want to explain the process for any of the questions and answers that families and parents may have at this time?
Certainly. If you have a question that you would like to ask, we ask that you please raise your hand using the reaction tool at the bottom of your screen. When recognized, if you could unmute yourself and state your name. We would just ask if you have individual questions that are personal in nature, that those should be directed to your building principal or the appropriate department. Not seeing any hands raised. Are there any questions from anybody on the call that they would like to ask?
I have a question. Since earlier this year, the teachers and staff apparently had a different set of procedures for travel. Have those now synced up to the same ones you're asking us to follow with the new guidelines of the state? Or do they still have a separate set to travel and quarantine and disclose where they were that aren't the same that the families have to follow?
I think the only thing that was different earlier in the year, and Dr. O'Black, I'm trying to recall, but I think the only thing different is that we weren't requiring a teacher to get an immediate test upon travel back into the district. And one of the challenges that we face with that is that we have teachers that need to teach, and we have a shortage of substitute teachers. And so it was important that, obviously they would have to screen and determine if there were any symptoms. And so we're following the similar guidelines for our staff as we are for students. Once again, I think this is on the honor system. I think that, we could have staff and students that travel outside the state that we don't know about. And so we just encourage, families to communicate with us, staff to communicate with us, and we'll do our very best to be consistent.
Any other questions from any members on the call this evening?
Just one more quick question. So what would we need to see to move to 5 full day in-person instruction, especially at the elementary level, since the state has come out recommending elementary school age kids should be in-person instruction, and several of the surrounding school districts to us are putting their elementary age, or at least primary level, 5 days starting next week?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And we've been planning towards this and working towards this. Obviously, we want to make the transition into hybrid. We want to get a few weeks under our belt, and our goal is to continue to plan and work towards bringing our at least K-3. That's the goal right now, is to consider that sometime in the month of February. So we want to work towards that, though. That's going to be a collaborative effort with the administration, the school board, and the specific teacher groups, and working together with ensuring that the schools can be safe for our students. I understand there are a few districts surrounding us that are in 5 days, and there's a number of other districts that are not. And we recognize the need to have, especially our youngest learners, in 5 days, but we want to work towards that to ensure safety. And so we will definitely be considering that. We've had discussions at the board level, at the administration level, with the associations, and we're going to continue to explore that and do so in a safe manner when we can, and implement that safely.
Are there any other questions this evening?
Yeah, I have one.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, hey, Sean, thanks for answering that question, but it doesn't sound like an answer. What is there a date certain that you guys have set a plan to get them back in 5 days a week? I understand there's a lot of factors to consider, a lot of issues to deal with. I get all of that, but if you don't set a date certain and you don't have a plan in place, you're never going to get there. So is there any consideration to making sure that you set a date certain, or is that something I got to bring up at the board meeting tomorrow night?
Yeah, we don't have a definitive date outlined right now, but we do have the last week in January. We want to continue this discussion, kind of evaluate where we're at. If I don't have a date in mind, and it's going to be the same response tomorrow night too. It's not that I'm avoiding the question. We just want to step into this, get our students back into hybrid, and experience some success and continue to move forward. I would say that this will be reevaluated the last week in January, with the hopes of sometime by the second week of February or mid-February, looking at this possibility. A definitive date, I think we've got to get our students back into hybrid first. And I appreciate your concern and just sharing that you want something a little bit more definitive than that. But right now, our definitive date is next Tuesday. And from there forward, we're going to be evaluating the situation around us in the county and determine how it's going, and do so when we can safely move to that 5-day transition.
Gina, I see that you have your hand raised. You can go ahead and ask your question.
I guess sort of piggybacking off of the last two questions, I'm not quite as stuck on the certainty of a specific date, but I guess my question goes more towards, despite the fact of maybe not having a date at this time set of when we can transition back into pre-COVID, pre-pandemic schooling for our children, are you guys working on having a tangible plan? Because I feel like that was, as a parent, my frustration with this past summer was that it felt like everything kept getting delayed because you were waiting for a date, but you weren't using the time to have a specific plan. And again, I'm not involved with the board, so that's just my perspective. I hope that made sense. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a continuous process. Even in the summertime, it was a continuous process. We didn't wait to, just see what was going to happen. The groups were continually working together to provide the safest option for our students. And we're going to continue to work together to ensure that that's how we transition from each step, from hybrid to 5-day, whether it's K-3, K-5, whatever we decide, we'll do our very best to communicate with our families and make sure that they're apprised of the progress that we're making. We've, aspired to communicate on a weekly basis, and we'll continue to do so. And we'll let parents know the progress that we're making as we work towards that goal of getting into 5-day in-person traditional instruction, especially at the elementary level.
Okay, well then I guess I would respond to that by saying that I guess my frustration then is with what you consider to be communication. I don't mean to sound that harsh, but like in August, on Monday, we got an email saying, sign up for this, we're going to do 5-day transition. And then on Wednesday at the board meeting, we learned that that wasn't even a possibility and it was going to start 100% virtual. So to me, that's not really feeling like we're being part of the communication process and we're hearing everything throughout the planning stages. I get that there are things that we don't need to know about necessarily, or like it has to go through the planning stages before it can be communicated. But I guess I just am frustrated. Sorry.
Gina, thanks for sharing your concerns, and we will certainly work to continue to improve on our communication, making sure that parents understand rationale for decisions. And obviously, I understand that it's the timing too that really is difficult for families. So we got to be cognizant of that as well.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Any other questions from anybody on the call this evening?
I have one more. Sean, has the state, county, or any governmental entity told you that you can't go back 5 days a week?
No, but they have not relaxed standards on obviously things like the 6 feet and masking. And so those are some of the challenges that we've got to work through. So there's no mandate that the state has issued to any school district in the state of Pennsylvania to say you can't do this. But we do have to adhere to the guidelines that they've issued to us. And so that's important to note.
And
Are
I
you
get that.
talking to the other districts that already do this to see how they are doing it? Or are we just going to let North Allegheny and Pine Richland kind of lead the way, even though that I know in the fall when school started, we kind of thought we'd let them do it, be guinea pigs, and then we'd all be virtual, but they proved that they can put kids in hybrid and full in person. And it doesn't seem like you're talking to them to get inputs from how they have successfully been able to keep their students, the K through 6th graders, K through 3rd, socially distanced by the same guidelines that we have for our county and state.
Well, not to be adversarial, but Pine Richland and North Allegheny are not in that model right now. However, Hampton and Fox Chapel are, and yes, we absolutely have continuous conversations with these school districts, to kind of see where they're at and what they're doing. And I would just say that in some cases, I'm not the COVID police, but I would say in some cases, they're not adhering to the 6 feet guidelines. And you think about spaces like cafeterias, school buses, hallways and such. And in some of those cases, they've hired additional teachers to space out a little bit and create additional space, but in some they have not. And we've taken those guidelines to be literal, and we're going to do our best to adhere to them.
Mr. Aiken?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you can hear me. First of all, this is Tim Gasky. I'd like to thank you and Brian and all your staff for all the efforts you've been putting in. And I just wanted to ask the question of transportation-wise, we are 100% go. ABC's all ready to roll and everything with Tuesday start date?
Yes, sir. And earlier in the presentation, we had mentioned that nothing for transportation has changed since November. And so the bus that you rode, the times that you caught the bus, are still the same. That information can be found in Infinite Campus. And if you have any questions regarding transportation at all, you can contact your school principal and they can answer any questions that you may have. But yes, they are
Okay,
ready, Mr. Gasky.
Okay, I wasn't here for the beginning of the meeting.
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah.
jumped
I
in a
know.
little late, so. Okay, I appreciate it. Thank
Sure.
you.
Any other questions? Mr. Aiken, it looks like we don't have any other questions this evening.
Okay. Well, on behalf of the school district, I'd just like to thank you guys for your patience. We know this has been a very challenging time. We're going to continue to work to get our students back into school. We're going to continue to work to keep them safe when they're here. As noted, we want to open these schools up, and we're going to do so safely. And if we have anything that we need to communicate, we're going to continue to anticipate what those needs are and get definitive dates out and work towards a plan together, so that we can meet the needs of our students during this very difficult time. We thank you for your patience, and we appreciate your support and partnership with us. Feel free to contact me or Dr. O'Black individually if you have any individual questions, or like we've said on numerous occasions, you can always reach out to your school principal or teachers or counselors too, and they can assist as well. We want to make sure during this time period that we're as responsive as we possibly can be, so that our parents know that we hear and understand their concerns, and we work together towards finding better solutions as we move forward. So thank you all. Have a nice evening. And we look forward to seeing our students in person starting next week.